Hi guys, welcome back to this series on game genres. This time we're looking at the sports genre, game definitions, and replay value. Just a couple of quick things to get out of the way first. This video is part of a series, so if you haven't seen the others, please check them out on my channel, and while you're there, why not hit subscribe? Second is that this genre, like all video game genres, is defined by what the player does, and not by how the characters might look or speak. So let's dive right into the sports genre. See what I did there? From a design perspective, making games in this genre involves two things: rules and mechanics, and I'm going to talk about both. Most sports games try to copy real-life sport in some way. We've got basketball games.
Here's Green, and Rooney sends it back.
Football games. The racing subgenre. And even some hybrid games that combine elements of different existing genres. Whatever they are governed by rules, and these rules often come from the rules of whatever real-life sport they're copying. One of the easiest ways we can compare games in this genre is by looking at how different games build on the same core rules. A good comparison is FIFA and Rocket League. Both of them build on the basic rules of football, with each team trying to score more goals than the other. Winning involves keeping control of the ball, passing, shooting, and saving. However, one way in which they are different is around physical contact. In FIFA, if you make too much physical contact, then your player is sent off. Whereas in Rocket League, the right amount of physical contact will see your opponent having to sit out for a short time. This fundamental difference will mean that players play the games in different ways. Stopping the opponent from shooting can mean very different things, even though the games are both based around the rules of football. In any given match, progression is usually recorded through some kind of points system, be that goals, hoops, or something else entirely. But these games don't just want you to play once, they want you to play again and again. One way they do this is to tie the outcome of individual matches to an overall tournament, be that a knockout tournament or a league. Now, winning one match is not enough. In order to win the league, you need to come back again and again. And players are willing to do that with sports games in a way that they are not with most other genres. I've played one of my favourite adventure games, Silent Hill 2, about 7 or 8 times. But I reckon you will all know someone who's played FIFA games 7 or 8,000.
You ran away from the ball!
So why are some genres infinitely replayable and others not? Well, part of it comes down to what makes games games. And this is where we get into that little bit of theory. One way of defining games comes from the Dutch ludologist Jesper Juul. A ludologist is someone who sits around all day playing games and then writes about them for universities. Sounds pretty sweet, right? And he developed what's called the classic game model, which is a checklist of what makes games games. And you'll notice what's right at the top: rules. But I want to put the rules on the sidelines for a moment and talk about some of the other things that make games different from other media. Specifically, I want to talk about number 2, number 3, and number 5, because they are the ones that apply most to the sports genre. So firstly, games have variable outcomes. At the most basic level, that means you can win or lose. Mario can rescue the princess, or he can die trying. But whereas adventure games have 1 or 2 variables, sports games have hundreds. You can play the same sports game between the same 2 players, controlling the same 2 teams 100 times, and you'll never have exactly the same experience, even if the scores are the same. This is just like sport in real life, which is what makes people enjoy it so much. It's unpredictable. The valorization of outcomes simply means that some outcomes are better than others. Winning, for example, is better than losing.
5-0! Why would I quit when I'm winning 5-0?
Again, sports games have hundreds of possible ways to measure the outcome. In Rocket League alone, you can measure the number of goals, first touches, shots, demolitions, assists and saves. And any 2 games of Rocket League will be very different. as opposed to any two survival horror games, which will be fairly similar.
A dead person can't write a letter.
This is made all the more prominent by the multiplayer nature of the games. Humans are simply less predictable than bots. Finally, number 5 on our list of what games need. Players that are attached to the outcomes in some way. Players need to want to win, or even want to lose, or want to draw. A game where both players are trying to lose, or where one player is trying to win but the other is trying to draw, are still competitive. And the sports genre, perhaps more so than any other game genre, is about competition. If people don't care, they don't really play. Sports games give the player so many different ways to win, so many different things to celebrate, brag about, or just to show off their skill, that even if they don't score the most goals, they will still be able to find something that they did better than the other person. Putting this in is good games design. It makes the players want to go back again and again to improve on each little thing. Another thing that lots of sports games have to add replay value is a yearly release cycle. Take FIFA for example. There's a new FIFA release every year. The mechanics and gameplay change very little, but the new game reflects the new teams, new strips, and new personalities in play. Like buying the new home strip every year, people will buy the new game, and they'll play it. Again, taking their team to the top of the world. Again. This is another thing that adds replay value to sports games that other genres just don't do nearly as much. Finally, we can return to rules. And that's not just games like FIFA copying the rules of real-life football.
Penalty given and yellow card handed out.
Computer games are rule-based systems. Rules are what makes them work. Rules like how many APs players have in turn-based strategies. Rules like how much health a player has in an adventure game and how much certain enemies take off that health when they hit you. And sports games have rules too. Rules like how fast a player can go on different surfaces, how hard they can hit the ball, and how tired this might make them. Rules are a big feature of sports games, and, as with other genres, the player has several options to customize their player or team to give them an edge within this rule-based system. For example, in Rocket League, the player can change the thickness of their car's wheels. And whilst this doesn't make the car any faster, it does make it more responsive to the controller when you move. Comparing what customization options do between different games and how this affects the core mechanics is another good way to explore this genre and hit distinction grade. Finally, we can talk about mechanics. Most sports games have mechanics aimed at scoring points, and you can directly compare what the player needs to do with the controller to score points in a football sports game with how the player might score points in a track and field type of sports game. However, in order to have so many variable outcomes, there has to be a high degree of luck in the game. So how do you program luck into a rule-based system that's run by numbers? Well, one of the ways you can do it is to use the physics engine. A lot of sports games are physics-based. Physics-based games take the physics of the game engine, things like gravity or the speed at which something moves or bounces on different materials, and turn it into a game. Let me give you an example. Heading the ball in Rocket League is a combination of watching where the ball is going to land, judging your speed when approaching it, and finally timing your jump to perfection. All of these things are based around the control system of the game and the physics of the engine. However, the precise angle at which you hit the ball, combined with the direction it is rolling in and the speed at which it's moving, will mean that some strikes go in, while others hit the bar. It's things like this roll and speed and angle that are influenced by the physics of the game, because they're usually dependent on what the ball was doing last. And as soon as that ball is acted upon by gravity, pulled down, and bounces on a surface with different physics materials on it to control that bounce, what it does next is out of the hands of the player and into the realm of the game's physics. And here we're back to the sort of game that you're trying to copy. How high a football should bounce will be different from how high a basketball should bounce or a rocket ball. And you can compare these things when comparing games in this genre. and when comparing the sports genre to other genres like puzzle games. With that in mind, in my next video I'm going to take a look at puzzle games, with a focus on target audiences and how the key demographics of this genre might be different from, say, the sports or action genres. Thanks for watching, y'all.